Good.
Hey guys, welcome to the Ultimate Morning Routine Challenge. I'm a human biologist and co-founder of the Ultimate Human, Gary Brecka, and I'm so pumped that you guys are here. Guys, over the next 3 days, we're going to completely transform the way that you start your day so you can optimize your energy, optimize your focus, your longevity, and even your performance. And I've been super, super intentional about putting this 3-day challenge together because I think that the morning routine is what not only does it start your day, but it sets the tone for your cellular biology for the next entire 24-hour cycle. So I'm going to break this down into some simple, easy, actionable steps. And what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about a good, a better, and a best. I know a lot of you have really, really busy schedules, so you don't have 90 minutes in the morning to care for yourself. I know some of you have 60 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, but what if you only have 15 minutes? What if you actually can't change much about your morning routine? We're going to try to biostack the routines that you're already doing so that your cellular biology gets the reward that it deserves out of your morning routine. I've been deep down the rabbit hole lately about, what is really plaguing humanity. We're the largest spender in healthcare worldwide here in the United States. As many of you know, the United States leads the world in only 7 things: morbid obesity, type 2 diabetes, multiple chronic disease in a single biome. We have the highest rates of childhood cancer. We have the highest rates of multiple diseases in the single biome. We lead the world in maternal mortality. We lead the world in infant mortality. And now we are ranked 66th in the world in life expectancy. I gave a talk yesterday, a Make America Healthy Again talk yesterday at Mar-a-Lago to thousands of guests, on behalf of Bobby Kennedy and some other really just powerful influencers in the space. I feel very blessed to be a part of that movement, and I want to take you guys on that movement with me. And part of what it starts with is just being intentional and very conscious about our bodies. I want you to think about your body as a temple. And we really need to think about this as a temple. We only have one temple. Let's not let thieves into our temple. Let's put things into our bodies that are going to serve us, serve our cellular biology. Let's actually be conscious and intentional about what goes in our mouth, what we swallow, what we drink, what we put on our skin, what we expose our bodies to. Because as many of you know, I spent 22 years as a mortality researcher, and I can tell you emphatically that the reason why the majority of Americans are not living healthier, happier, longer, more fulfilling lives are because of modifiable risk factors that we can change. I love the word lifestyle medicine because lifestyle medicine implies that by changing our lifestyle acts as the medication for our bodies. I deeply believe more in what God gave us than what man makes us. And so we're going to talk about a lot of cellular biology, the science behind it, what the best morning routines are. Should we be oil pulling, tongue scraping? What are the effects of those? We're going to start with the oral cavity. We're going to work our way all the way through the gut because a healthy gut is a healthy biome. And then I'm going to make an offer to you guys to join my VIP community because I'm shifting the entire focus of my adult lifetime now to be in service to my VIP community, because I realize that if I build an army of like-minded people like yourself, and I educate them and inspire them to make a transition, you will go out and educate other people and inspire them to make a transition. So I'm going to spend some time talking about that later, but I'm going to select people from this VIP group, and we are going to each month, we're going to take a deep dive into the things that are plaguing us. Do you have an autoimmune disease? Do you have Crohn's, irritable bowel syndrome? Are you suffering from anxiety? Are there people in your family that have ADD, ADHD, OCD, manic depression? Do you have people that are on SSRIs? Do you have people that are suffering from ADD or ADHD that have been on Adderall for long periods of time? Do you have people with mold toxicity, metal toxicity, viral pathogens, even these toxicities that we encounter every day in our daily lives that build up in our cellular biology, and we don't know how to get them out of the body. So I'm really going to take this group on a journey. And for just a minute before we start, I want to talk to my female audience for a moment. There's a really scary statistic, and this is facts. I'm happy to link the studies below. But 82% of all autoimmune disease is found in women. Why do women have almost 4 times the rate of autoimmune disease of men? It's because women have a tendency to be more selfless, meaning caregiver syndrome and putting the needs of others before the needs of themselves is a rampant habit of women. I understand you've got kids, you've got husbands, you've got careers, you've got responsibilities, but we're going to talk today about how we can flip that script and talk about how we be selfish in our mornings so that you can be selfless the rest of the day. Because if we care for our biome in the morning, it changes the entire trajectory of our day. So this challenge is designed to give you real science-backed strategies that you can implement immediately. So make sure you've downloaded this PDF. It's entirely free. We're really going to encourage you to join the VIP community at the end of this, and you're going to see the value that I'm going to give to you. But I'm ready to get started, guys. I've lined up some insane guests for you, and our VIP today is going to be Stephen A. Smith. Tomorrow is Dr. Paul Saladino. We've got Dave Asprey that's going to join us. On the third day, Mark Wahlberg is on deck, Lauren Rettinger. We've got so many incredible special guests that we're going to bring to the table for you, because I want you to see the power of small changes in the lives of impactful people, and I want you to hear their words about how this morning routine has impacted their lives. So today we're going to cover the power of the morning routine and how light exposure actually changes your body, and how oral health and meridian. And we're going to talk about something called meridian mapping. Your mouth is the gateway to your entire body, and there are gateways between your oral cavity and almost every single organ system in the body. And I think when we start our morning routine, we wake up in the morning, what is the first thing that we do when we get out of bed? We're going to talk about first light and why getting morning sunlight is the most powerful thing that you can do for your health, and how it can reset your circadian biology. But before we even get outside into the light, we should be going in straight out of bed, splashing a little water on our face, and starting our oral care routine. And this is where I think people go wrong. First of all, we put toothpaste on a toothbrush. We don't intentionally think about what kind of toothpaste we're using. We get in there and we think it's a contest to try to scrub the enamel off of our teeth. I'll give you 3 tips about how you can start your brushing routine in the morning. And these are critically important. And if any of you are familiar with dental hygiene, or you're dental hygienist, or you're actually practicing dentist, you know this to be true. First of all of us should be using a toothbrush that's soft. Medium and hard toothbrushes will actually damage and erode the enamel in your tooth, and they're very difficult on our gums. Receding gums are the primary reason why our oral cavity gets infected by things like cavitations, and our microbiome in our oral cavity, a lot of it is contained in the sockets in our gum layer. So the first thing you can do, if you're not already doing it, is tomorrow replace your toothbrush with a soft toothbrush. These are couple of bucks, and it's a game changer in how we're brushing our teeth. The second thing that we can do is we can switch from a fluoride-based toothpaste, which is usually also full of artificial sweeteners, to a toothpaste that is the toothpaste that switches fluoride for something called hydroxyapatite. I want you to look for that on the label of your toothpaste. If you actually spin around a tube of toothpaste, you'll actually see on the back of it, there's a mandatory FDA warning that says, if you swallow this toothpaste, contact poison control immediately. And why do they tell you to contact poison control if you actually swallow toothpaste? They say if there's more than used for brushing is swallowed, contact poison control. And why is that? Because fluoride is a neurotoxin. Fluoride is actually something called fluorosilicic acid. It is the byproduct of industrial fertilizer production. We produce about 230 million metric tons of fertilizer in this country every year for farming and agriculture. And when we produce that fertilizer, there is a toxic compound called fluorosilicic acid that is in that fertilizer that we have to take out because it will burn the root of the plant. We take that fluorosilicic acid and we dump it into our municipal water supply as fluoride. If you go to the National Toxicology Program, or you go to the National Institute of Health, you can actually go right there. You can put in the word fluoride, and you will see that it is categorized as a neurotoxin. Now, fluoride is also supposed to remineralize your enamel. In other words, we get tiny little pits in our enamel, and inside of these pits, microbiomes embed themselves into those pits, and they begin to erode the enamel and get into the dentin of the tooth. But fluoride only has a marginal impact on this. If you go to your dentist and you get fluoride treatments once a year, that's fine. But brushing your teeth every day with fluoride toothpaste is the first little small shift that we're going to do when we talk about caring for our oral cavity. Second thing that I want to do is I want to talk about the science behind the oral cavity even before we get to light. Can we actually switch up here? Can I actually do something on the board before we get here? I want to walk you through why the next three things that I'm going to talk about are so important. This will only add maybe 2 minutes to your oral routine in the morning. So you've woken up, you splashed water on your face, you brush your teeth with a soft toothbrush with hydroxyapatite, not with fluoride. And now I want to transfer over to this screen, and I want to talk a little bit about why the next part of our morning routine is so important. Can these guys see this? I'm going to blow this up. I want to actually show you a map of the meridians inside of your mouth and show you that our teeth, each one of our teeth can be mapped to different organ systems in the body. Look how many times the colon is mapped to different organ systems in the body. What's really interesting about atherosclerosis and arterial sclerosis, not only plaquing and scarring of the arteries, narrowing of the arteries, but also hardening of the arteries. What's really interesting is now a lot of research is mapping this back to the oral cavity. And why would we map calcium deposits in the arterial wall back to our oral cavity? Well, because there's only two ways that calcium can form into a bone-like structure in our bodies. Remember, our bones are not calcium. Calcium combines with something called phosphorus. It forms a compound called hydroxyapatite, and our bones are hydroxyapatite. In fact, contrary to popular belief, you actually can't make bones with just calcium. Putting people on additional calcium supplements has proved to be futile. I mean, nursing homes all over the world are full of elderly men and elderly women that have been on calcium supplements for 15 or 20 years that are plagued with osteopenia or osteoporosis. But the point that I want to raise is the fact that when there are two types of cellular structures in the body that can actually create bone. One is an osteoclast, which builds bones, and that's inside of your bone. The second one is a bacteria from your mouth. This bacteria in your mouth that can actually create enamels and bones is the exact same bacteria that is found in the arterial wall when we calcify our arteries. So these pathways map directly from our oral cavity directly into our cardiovascular system. So caring for the oral cavity is extraordinarily important. When we look at different teeth and we think, wow, could our teeth actually be affecting our eyesight? Could it be affecting our respiratory rate? Could it be affecting the way that contents move through our colon? The answer is yes. If you know my story, I actually cracked my, I think it was my 13th meridian molar in the back of my mouth. And I called my biologic dentist friend. He said, hey, send me a picture of it. So I sent him a picture. And when he saw the picture, he sent me this chart. And he said, Gary, do you ever get left anterior shoulder pain? And I go, that's strange. I actually do. He said, do you ever get left lower lobe pain in your lung? Which was really astounding to me because when I was doing HIIT's cardio, I would actually get a catch in my lung, which I attributed to just exercise-induced, a little exercise-induced catch in my lung. And then the third question he asked me absolutely blew my mind. And if you haven't seen my podcast with Dr. Jagar Gandhi, please go watch it because it will absolutely blow your mind how impactful the oral cavity is to the rest of our biome. The third thing he said to me was, does your left toe ever go numb? And that really freaked me out because I hadn't told anyone, not even my wife, that once in a while my left toe would go numb and I would just kind of tap it on the floor. He goes, yeah, that's your tooth meridian. It's mapped to a cavitation, an infection from a root canal that you have below that tooth. I go, how do you know I had a root canal? He said, just by the symptoms that you're telling me. So I actually went and had that tooth removed. I had the root canal cleaned out. He embedded red light therapy. He actually ran ozone gas into my jaw. He packed it full of my own platelets called platelet-rich fibrin. And then he replaced that tooth. And 48 hours after that procedure, all of those symptoms went away. So it's extraordinarily important that we care for our oral cavity. And I'm going to talk about what I think is the best way to care for our oral cavity. This is a cutaway view of the nervous system that innervates your teeth and how it originates and corresponds with the brain. Look at the number of pathways between the oral cavity and your eyes, your nose, your olfactory bulbs in your brain, and direct pathways into your brain. You know, we're starting to believe now that the genesis of a lot of early onset cognitive decline are these neuroinflammatory conditions in the body. When microbes migrate from the mouth into these areas in these neuronal pathways, they can go directly into the brain. So caring for our oral cavity is absolutely important. We're not specifically covering biological dentistry on this, but if you actually have mercury fillings in your mouth right now, I would really suggest contacting a biologic dentist and getting those replaced with amalgamate or with porcelain. If you have had a root canal, there is a 100% chance that you have an infection in your jaw. 100% chance. It's called a cavitation. Dentists are the only area of medical practice in the world that believes that you can leave dead tissue in the body. No other area of medicine believes that you can leave dead tissue in the body and ignore it. If your appendicitis dies, you need to take the appendix out. If any of your organ systems or tissue becomes necrotic, meaning it's dead, you have to take that out of the body. But we believe that we can kill the roots and the blood supply to a tooth, and we can just leave that alone in the body. The reason why it's painless is because you don't have a nerve there anymore, and the blood supply actually retreats, and it becomes a breeding ground for bacteria. So one of the greatest tips that I could give you guys, if you have root canals, please go see a biologic dentist and get those replaced. If you want to see something gross, I'm actually waiting on a tooth on this side. Can they see this if I actually show them? Okay, so I won't show you. I won't open my mouth and show you, but I actually have a cap here and I'm actually waiting to have the tooth put on it. I'm a deep believer in this. But this gives you a little bit of insight into how our oral cavity innervates the rest of our body. So let's talk about two things I want you to add to your morning routine that you likely are not doing right now. One is tongue scraping and one is actually oil pulling. These are dirt cheap alternatives to add to your morning routine. And we're going to be so intentional about every step of our way. We use a soft toothbrush. We use hydroxyapatite toothpaste. The next thing that we do is after we brush our teeth for the first time, we're going to take a tongue scraper and scrape our tongue. I went out and I actually wondered if there was any clinical research on the effectiveness of tongue cleaning. And I'm going to link these studies for you so you guys can see these. There is a meta-analysis on tongue cleaning methods, which is a comparative clinical trial employing a toothbrush and a tongue scraper. And I'll just take you to the conclusion section. All of these studies I'm going to link for you. But basically, the tongue scraper showed a 75% reduction in VSCs, which are volatile sulfur compounds, versus the toothbrush alone category. So we're brushing our teeth, but we're leaving seething bacteria that embeds itself into our tongue. Our tongue is moist, the back of our mouth is dark, it's oxygen deprived, and it can become a breeding ground for bacteria. The best kind of tongue scraper to use is a really cheap copper tongue scraper. You can get these at CVS, you can get them at Walgreens. So you're gonna brush your teeth with a soft brush, you're gonna use hydroxyapatite toothpaste, and then you're just gonna scrape your tongue. You're gonna be shocked what comes off if you haven't done this before. This is gonna lower the VSCs in the volatile sulfur compounds in your oral cavity so that they don't have the gases that are needed to breed bacteria. Really interesting study. The second thing I want to talk about is something called oil pulling. And the oil pulling is it's a part of Ayurvedic medicine. Ayurvedic medicine is an Indian form of medicine. It's actually the oldest form of medicine in the world. It's based on observation. They put you into categories like Pitta, Pitta Kapha. Well, things kind of freaking out a little bit there. There it goes. It doesn't like it when I make it too big. But I'm going to send you a clinical study on the effect of oil pulling with coconut oil to improve dental hygiene and oral health. This was a systemic review of multiple clinical studies, and essentially it had 182 participants. There were 42 eligible studies. I mean, this is an excellent study for you, for those of you that don't believe that putting a little bit of raw, organic, extra virgin coconut oil, cold pressed coconut oil in your mouth, about a half a tablespoon, and swishing it between your gums can have a major impact on your oral health. So you scraped your tongue now, you've gotten the VSCs out of your mouth, these volatile sulfur compounds, and now we're just going to take dirt cheap. You can actually get it at Costco. They have tubs of extra virgin, cold pressed, organic coconut oil. Please do not, some of these studies were actually done with seed oils. Please don't use seed oils. They're very pro-inflammatory. You know how I feel about seed oils. You take these canola plants and these rape seeds and these other plants and you put them in a commercial press. And because the substance that comes out is very gummy, what happens is they have to degum it with hexane. Hexane is one of the most powerful neurotoxins that we know of. And after they degum it with hexane, they take that oil and they heat it to 405 degrees, which turns it rancid. And once that oil is rancid, it's now putrefied and it smells. So they have to deodorize it. They deodorize it with sodium hydroxide, a very powerful carcinogen. So you take a neurotoxin and a carcinogen used to degum and deodorize an oil that you've made putrid and rancid by heating it to temperatures that that plant and that seed or that oil cannot encounter on the surface of the earth. I get so much pushback on social media when I start talking about the negative impact of seed oils. And very often I'm not attacking the plant. I'm attacking the distance from the plant to your table. A lot of what we talk about in my community is how do we just get around the system? You know, people say, well, gosh, sunflower seeds can't hurt you. Well, no, sunflower seeds in their raw form can't hurt you. But when you put them in commercial presses, you add hexane, sodium hydroxide, and then about a quarter of the oil that we see on the shelf, especially vegetable oils, has been additionally bleached. And then your American Heart Association does you the favor of sticking a beautiful little picture of a smiling heart on there, and it calls it a heart healthy oil. It is anything but heart healthy. I'm going to go down that road in another talk. But these were randomized controlled trials, and it suggested that oil pulling with coconut oil may have a beneficial effect on improving oral health and dental hygiene. It says that further clinical studies are needed. So I actually went and pulled several of these clinical studies up. There is a study, a research article on coconut oil, specifically another one this was just looking at different types of oils. And this one, they did use seed oils, but they were only measuring the microbiome and the health of the gums. So in the mornings, we're going to brush with a soft toothbrush. We're going to use a hydroxyapatite toothpaste. We're going to add a tongue scraper to our morning routine, and we're going to add oil pulling. All right, your morning routine for oral health is done. Let's move to phase 2. Phase 2, we're going to start talking about light. And the reason why I want to talk about light is that we are very photovoltaic beings. If you haven't heard me talk about this before, light is very powerful when it passes through our skin. I'm going to talk about what we do in dark climates as well. But let's talk about why getting morning sunlight is the most powerful thing that you can do for your morning routine. As you wake up in the morning, a waking hormone called cortisol is beginning to rise in your bloodstream. It's also rising in your brain. The sleep hormone, melatonin, is starting to fall off. There's a second hormone that's also, there's a second compound, that's also rising in your body when you wake up in the morning called adenosine. I'm going to come back to that in a second because we're going to talk about delaying our caffeine for 60 to 90 minutes in the morning. And if you're like my wife, that was a really tough one to accept. But we're going to talk about the physiology of our morning routine and why it's so important to do things in a certain sequence. So you're done with your toothbrushing. Now, for me, I go right away and I get into a cold plunge. Before I even go outside and get my first light in the morning, if you don't have a cold plunge or you can't afford a cold plunge, don't worry about it. You can make a cold plunge simply by taking Tupperware containers the night before, filling them full of water, seal them, and put them in your refrigerator or put them in your freezer. Overnight, when these freeze, you can drop these ice blocks into your tub, and in about 30 minutes, you're going to have a perfect cold plunge. In an average tub in your house, that cold plunge will last 3 days. Remember, a cold plunge only needs to be 58 degrees to technically be a cold plunge. Colder is not better, and longer is not better. I cold plunge for 3 minutes minimum, 6 minutes maximum, and I use 50 degree. My water is at 50 degrees. And I'm going to explain that why in a second. So as soon as I'm done my oral routine, I do the difficult thing first and I get straight into cold plunge. If you don't have a tub that you could, freeze ice blocks of, from a Tupperware container, and you don't have a cold plunge, you can also use a cold shower. The majority of you are not going to do this for one reason, because you are aggressively pursuing comfort. I have a saying that aging is the aggressive pursuit of comfort. Cold therapy is one of the best hormetic stresses and safest hormetic stresses we can apply to the body. But when we do it wrong, we start to become cold adaptive and we don't just cold shock the body. So why would we want to go right from brushing our teeth to either getting in a cold shower or getting into a cold tub? Here's the 5 reasons. When we immerse the body in cold water, or we expose the body to cold water, remember, water is 29 times more thermogenic than air, which means that water removes heat from the body at 29 times the rate that air does. So when you remove heat that fast, areas of the body begin to panic, right? The liver, for example, and the brain think maybe you were walking on a sheet of ice and you broke through into a cold lake. What's the body going to do to save your life? First thing that's going to happen is you're going to have a massive peripheral vasoconstriction. Your arteries are going to constrict because they're smooth muscle. They're going to force all the blood into the core, liver, lungs, pancreas, kidneys, and up to your brain, which is very good for you. It's going to hypercirculate and keep the core of your body warm. The second thing that's going to happen is your liver is going to panic, and it's going to dump something called cold shock proteins into your bloodstream. Cold shock proteins are some of the most powerful reserve proteins that we have in the body. There are two of them in particular, LIN, L-I-N 28A, and LIN 28B, that I've been researching or reading the research on. I have been conducting the research, but I've been reading the research on. And these are directly linked to improving your insulin sensitivity. What if just getting in cold water could raise your metabolism, improve your mood, spike your dopamine, reduce fat, improve your insulin sensitivity, and elevate your emotional state? That's what cold water exposure is going to do for you. After these cold shock proteins hit your bloodstream, they begin to scour the body of free radical oxidation. They can also increase the rate of protein synthesis, which is muscle repair. So if you had a hard workout the night before, you're actually improving the rate at which your muscles are repairing. It's also a great way to prepare for your morning exercise routine. The third thing it's going to do, it's going to activate something called brown fat. We have two types of fat in our body. We have multiple locations, visceral fat, body fat, but mainly two types of fat in the body. One is white fat, which we're all familiar with because that's the ones you see around your middle. And then there's a type of fat called brown fat. Brown fat is a super specific type of fat that exchanges a calorie for heat. You know that a calorie, the definition of a calorie is it's actually a measure of heat. You measure 1 cubic centimeter of water and the amount of energy it takes to raise it 1 degree centigrade. That's what a calorie is. Calorie is a measure of energy, and it's derived by measuring the amount of heat. So if you actually remove heat from the body and drop your body temperature, there is a cost to your body going back to the normal temperature. If you're in a 50-degree tub and you get out into 75-degree air, how does your body go back to 98.6 degrees? How does your body temperature exceed the ambient temperature of the room you're in? Well, brown fat will take calories and exchange it for heat. So yes, cold plunging does accelerate caloric burn. It also skyrockets your metabolism. So you have a cold shock protein release, you have a peripheral vasoconstriction, you have the exchange of brown fat turning calories into heat, and then at the same time, you get a spike in dopamine. I've actually seen clinical studies comparing cocaine to cold plunging. I don't know where they got these people or where they did this study, because it probably would be illegal in every state, but somehow they looked at the brains of people that were actually using amphetamines and cocaine, and the brains of people that had dopamine levels rise. And there was a substantial lengthening in the time frame of the dopamine release from cold plunging versus even using illicit drugs. That's why I call it my drug of choice. It will keep you in the best mood for longer. Those of you that are doing cold plunging on a regular basis, you know that you can be in a bad mood getting into a cold plunge. You cannot be in a bad mood getting out of a cold plunge. So just think about what you've done for your body, and you're barely 15 minutes into your day. You've flossed, you've scraped your tongue, you've done some oil pulling, you've used a soft toothbrush, you've used hydroxyapatite, you've moved from caring for your oral microbiome and for your gums and for your oral cavity, and now you've moved and gotten yourself straight into a cold plunge. Developing that discipline is super important, guys. Your morning routine should be something that is portable, that you can take with you anywhere in the world. One of my favorite travel tips is that our morning routine should be portable. You've seen me post about how I'll do 9 cities in 11 days. Sometimes these cities are on opposite sides of the world, multiple time zones, flying for 5 hours to 15 or 16 hours and still maintaining very elevated sleep scores above 95%. How do we do that? Our bodies crave routine. And the morning routine is the most important. I'm also going to talk about bookending your sleep by having a good sleep routine. But now we've gotten into a cold plunge. I get out of the cold plunge, I dry off, I put on dry shorts, and that's when we go outside, if we can get outside, and we get morning sunlight into our eyes. Your body has a built-in clock. It's called the circadian rhythm. It not only controls your sleep, but it controls your hormone production, controls your metabolism, it even controls your mental clarity. And the way you set this clock every morning is with light. We are extraordinarily photovoltaic beings. I'm going to talk first about what natural light does when it hits your skin and your eyes in the morning. I'm going to send you the clinical studies that show that it improves your sleep. Amazing study done by Whoop, where they actually had Whoop participants log and track their morning sunlight. And they logged and tracked alcohol consumption, meals before bed, lighting in the room, temperature in the room, blue light in bed, sleep mask, mouth tape. They tracked all kinds of different variables. The single most important variable that impacted their sleep score that night, meaning not the previous evening, but the evening that they're going to sleep, was morning sunlight. Now, I know a lot of you are in darker, colder climates, but it's super important for you to just get your drapes open and just get natural light into your eyes. If you can, and it's too cold to go outside, open the door and let natural sunlight hit your eyes. What happens when natural sunlight hits your eyes? Well, when light passes through your eyes, it begins the natural process of continuing the elevation of cortisol and the suppression of melatonin. Adenosine also begins to rise. Adenosine is what caffeine competes with in the brain, the receptors it competes with, because adenosine is what makes you sleepy. The higher the adenosine, the more effective the caffeine. And this is why delaying your coffee in the morning is a better idea to avoid your morning crash than waking up and going straight to the coffee maker. That's not being intentional about our mornings. So we've gotten out of a cold plunge, and now we're going to expose our eyes to sunlight. I'm going to talk about what happens when sunlight hits our skin too. For those of you that are in really dark climates, or you're doing shift work, or you don't have morning light in the at the time that you wake up in the morning, here's 3 things that you can do that will help that situation. You may want to write this down. You can use a 10,000 lux, L-U-X, light therapy box within 30 minutes of waking. If you've ever seen Brian Johnson, who gets up before the sun, he walks into his bathroom and he turns on this big light that looks like it's a white light. These are inexpensive lights. You can put it right by your sink, and you can actually get this light into your eyes right when you wake up while you're brushing your teeth. If you're blessed enough to be in a climate or have a routine where you can actually wake up with the sunlight in the morning, that's the best time to get sunlight. Remember, the first 45 to 60 minutes of the day is called first light. First light has no UVA and no UVB rays. So none of the damaging rays that will actually cause skin cancer. It also has high amounts of healthy blue light, not the blue wavelengths that we get from our screens, which actually raise our cortisol. It has healthy blue wavelengths from the sun. And even without the UVA and UVB, we can actually generate some vitamin D. So number 1, I would say good is using a Lux therapy light box, a 10,000 Lux light therapy light box within 30 minutes of waking. Better would be to actually expose your eyes to direct sunlight, meaning open the curtains and open the window, open the door, walk outside. The third would be to expose your eyes and your skin to sunlight, because when we expose our skin to sunlight, a really magical thing happens in our body. Can we actually go back to the screen? I want to talk about something else that is super important and majorly overlooked. If we actually look at our circulatory system in the body, right, and we look at our arteries and we look at our veins, here's a little known fact, unless you're one of my VIPs. When we look at our circulatory system, right, and we look at the arteries, we look at the veins, Uh, what very few cardiologists even talk about, what very few physicians or functional medicine doctors even talk about, is that the heart is only circulating 30% of the blood in our body. This entire part of our circulatory system, we're about 14% arteries, we're about 11.5% veins, give or take. This is the major part of our circulatory system. This is done by our heart. The heart puts pressure behind these arteries and pressure behind these veins. But this is only 30% of our circulation. The question is, where does the other 70% of our circulation come from? If none of us has a heart that's strong enough to pump blood from the center of our toes, center of our chest to the tip of our toes, through to the tip of our fingers, through our liver, our lungs, our pancreas, our kidneys, and our brain, what circulates the other 70% of our body? Well, these arteries and these veins dump into a smaller system called our capillaries, right? And these are really tiny arteries, really tiny veins. And guess what? They don't have pressure behind them. 70% of your circulation is not done by the heart. It's done by something called vasomotion. It's done by, what is the next? Can I bring up a slide here? It's done by something called vasomotion. I want you to think of a snake swallowing a mouse. So blood is inside of here, and a bolus of blood is actually pulsed and moved down this capillary system. It's done by vasomotor or vasomotion activity. What improves the tiny little vasomotor and vasomotion activities in our body? 70% of our circulatory system, which brings me back to one of my favorite topics, like hypertension. If you or a loved one has ever been diagnosed with hypertension, you've likely been diagnosed with something called idiopathic hypertension, hypertension of an unknown origin. And why is it an unknown origin? Because they went over here and looked at the 30% of your circulatory system that was done by the heart. And they said, wow, there's no blockages, there's no atherosclerosis, there's no arteriosclerosis, which is why your EKG is normal, why your EEG is normal, why your heart sounds are normal, why your lung sounds are normal, and why if you had advanced studies like a cardiac cath was normal, a dye contrast study was normal. Well, guess what all that was doing was looking at 30% of our circulatory system. And when they can't figure out why you have high blood pressure, they're going to look at your ancestors and they're going to say you have high blood pressure because your aunt had it and your uncle had it and your grandfather had it, which means that you have familial hypertension. That's one of the things that drives me nuts, because there is no gene being passed on from your ancestors that is giving you that condition. Why aren't we looking at the other 70% of our circulatory system over here? I mean, if I had a problem with my circulatory system and I could check out the 70% or the 30%, I would probably go here first. It's like if I had two guys that I was investigating for a crime and there was a 70% chance this guy did it and only a 30% chance this guy did it, I'd be looking at this guy first. But that's not what we do. We look at the vasculature, we look at the major arterial system, and there's rarely the complications there that tell us why we're having complications somewhere else. So why is it important to care for this microvascular circulation? Because these are the microvasculature that innervate your lungs. Think about how small a capillary has to be to touch the surface of your lung, exchange a gas with your lung, and not bleed into your lungs. That's how tiny these arteries are. They're smaller than a human hair, so small that liquid doesn't leak out of them, but gases can be exchanged across membranes with them, called the alveoli. So this is what's innervating 70% of our body: our skin, our hair follicles, our liver, our lungs, our pancreas, our kidneys, our brain. This is all microvasculature. Why do most people start wearing readers between the ages of 40s and their mid 50s? Sometimes it's in their 60s, but between the early 40s and mid 50s, most people start to wear readers. Is something happening to their eyes? Are their eyes changing shape? Is the pressure changing shape? Did something happen to the cornea? No. Very often it's the microvasculature supplying the back of the eyes. So what is really good for our microvasculature? What helps our microvasculature? How can we improve the health of the 70% of our circulatory system? Well, let me promise you, it's not hypertension medication. Okay, it's not beta blockers, it's not calcium channel blockers, it's not ACE inhibitors, it's not diuretics, it's not any of those things that are addressing the heart or the major circulatory system. It's these 5 things. So the best things for our microvasculature are the following: light, and specifically sunlight. When sunlight passes through your skin, there are wavelengths from the sun that pass through your skin. They hit that microvasculature, they hit that microvascular system, and they cause a gas that's in your mitochondria to be released in these tiny little microvessels. And it is called mitochondrial nitric oxide. Mitochondrial nitric oxide is a gas, and inside of your mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of your cells, which powers all human beings, inside of this little organelle called the mitochondria, there is a site where oxygen can bind or nitrogen, nitric oxide can bind. I want you to think of this site, which is called cytochrome C oxidase. I want you to think of this site as a one-armed man. Okay, so he can either shake hands with this gas, nitric oxide, or he can shake hands with this gas called oxygen. If I can get him to let go of nitric oxide and grab oxygen, I get a 16-fold step up in cellular energy. Guess what happens to the nitric oxide? It leaves the mitochondria. When it leaves the mitochondria, it spills over into the blood. After it spills into the blood, it hits the arterial wall. And if you know anything about nitric oxide, what happens when nitric oxide hits the arterial wall? The arterial wall relaxes. We call this vasodilation. It's actually not a dilating, it's not an expanding of the blood vessel, it's actually a relaxing of the blood vessel. So just by getting light in the morning, I can actually relax the microvasculature and improve my circulation. Incredible. This is also why I use a red light bed, but I'm going to give you, this is why I am such a fan of red light therapy. Red light therapy is about to become the panacea of longevity. But without going out and spending a ton of money on a red light therapy bed, you can expose your skin to sunlight. If you want to take it to the next level, find a clinic around you that actually has a red light bed that allows you to use it on a membership basis. What's crazy is I'm starting to see these in gyms and wellness centers and spas and some of these social wellness places where you can actually go and buy a membership and lay in a red light bed. Absolutely therapeutic. The second thing is cold heat exposure. Yes, these tiny little vessels can constrict and they can dilate. They constrict and they dilate. And just like a garden hose that you just lay out in the yard and allow to dry rot and harden, our arteries and our veins they have an elasticity to them. It's called vascular laxity. So how can I improve the vascular laxity? I can actually expose my skin to sunlight or get in a red light bed, or I can expose myself to cold and to heat. By vasodilating and vasoconstricting, this is what we're going to actually exercise this microvascular circulation. There are a few supplements that it also responds to. One is called TMG. That's trimethylglycine. If you have hypertension, you know how I feel about this amino acid. This is an amino acid that actually helps to remove homocysteine from the blood. Very good for the microvascular circulation. And another one called resveratrol. And another one called resveratrol. So these are all amazing things that we can do for our microvasculature. And the last thing is, which we're going to talk about, is minerals and hydration. Okay, so when we get inflammation in the body, and we know that inflammation is the root of all evil, why is inflammation so detrimental? Why is having histamines and cytokines and prostaglandin E2s and inflammatory factors in your body so damaging? By the way, why don't we get atherosclerosis or arterial sclerosis in this microvasculature? I'm going to explain that in a second. So when we think about the 70% of our circulation that the heart's not caring for, we have to independently care for this part of our circulatory system. The complications that come from getting inflammation in these tiny little vessels Remember, you have 63,000 miles of blood vessel in your body. 63,000 miles. If we're not caring for our microvasculature, what happens is you get a small amount of vasoconstriction from the from these arteries. So I'm going to show you what my top solution is for this. It's not just minerals and H2O, it's hydrogen gas. And you know what a huge fan of hydrogen gas I am. These are H2 tabs. I'm a big fan of hydrogen water. I have nothing to sell you guys today, but I'm going to show you a demonstration of why hydrogen gas, which you can bathe in or that you can add to your water, is such a game changer. I've been a big fan of these hydrogen water bottles, but I got so much flack on social media because these are like $250 or $275. So I went deep down the rabbit hole of how else can we create high part per million hydrogen gas and not charge, not have to spend $250 or $275 on a water bottle and charge it. And the answer is elemental magnesium. So I want to actually show you this. So elemental magnesium, if you've never actually seen this, this is actually what elemental, where's the camera? This is what elemental magnesium looks like. Can you focus on that? Yep. It's beautiful. It actually, well, let me hold it here. You can see it. See how it looks like a fern? See how it actually grows like it actually looks like a fern? This is an elemental magnesium. This is what elemental magnesium looks like. First of all, the majority of us, probably nearly every one of you, unless you've been following me for a while on this Zoom, is deficient in magnesium. Magnesium is good for our gut. It's good for our brain. It's one of the healthiest light metals in the human body. It's involved in over 300 biological transactions in our body, and it comes from Mother Earth. And our soil and our food supply is so magnesium deficient. So when you take this and you press it into a tablet, it effervesces into high part per million hydrogen water. So I want to show this to you. Some of my VIP community, you guys have seen this, so just bear with me for a second. If I want to measure, if I stick this in this water and I want to measure, can you zoom in on this possibly? Okay, I want to show you guys why I'm such a fan of this. If you want to measure whether or not something is causing inflammation or reducing inflammation, you can measure its ORP, its oxidative reduction potential. So what I did was I put this into the water and it has a positive 105. Can they see that? Can you hold it up to hold it towards you?
But can you hold it up to the camera?
Oh, just hold it to the camera.
Well, no, like the water. Like do it in front of
you.
Hold the cup in that and then bring it closer.
Bring it closer to the camera. Sorry, my production team's trying to show you this. I want to show you this in real time, guys. So what does that say? 109. So this is Mountain Valley spring water, one of my favorite types of spring water. So I'm a huge fan of Mountain Valley, but that water is going to cause some inflammation, right? Because if something has a positive oxidative reduction potential, it's causing inflammation. If it has a negative oxidative reduction potential, it is reducing inflammation. Blueberries are antioxidants because they donate ions and reduce inflammation. Vitamin C is an antioxidant because it donates ions and reduces inflammation. So in the morning, if I just took one of these hydrogen tablets, and these will cost you less than $1 a day. If I took one of these hydrogen tablets and I dropped it into that same glass of water and I measured the ORP, I want to see this number. Hold on, let me try to follow it around here. I would like to see this number go negative. So I want to show you this. Negative 334. Negative 334. Negative 376. So basically in 5 seconds,
negative 400.
It's negative 400. Wow. So this is making 12 part per million hydrogen water. So what's that going to do? When you put these ions into the body, guys, you are massively reducing your inflammation, which is feeding your microvascular circulation. So first thing in the morning, you don't have to do anything else but take a hydrogen tablet and drop it in your water. So those of you that are currently a part of my VIP program, I am so excited about this that I'm literally sending every single one of you a box of these for free. They're about 29 bucks. If you sign up to become one of my VIPs today, if you join the VIP program, I'm going to send you, we've got what, 2,000 people on here? We've got 4,000 people. Okay, so this is going to cost me a lot of money. There's no obligation for you to buy this, guys. I want to change the world. Elemental magnesium in your water, creating 12 part per million hydrogen water, will reduce inflammation, improve your circulation. There's incredible clinical studies, which I am going to link in the show notes below, so you can read them yourselves. For you science nerds that want to challenge this, I want you to go to hydrogenstudies.com and look at the 1,335 peer-reviewed clinical studies on there. You can deselect animal trials and just look at human trials. Those studies, 25 of those were done with this exact elemental magnesium tablet. I am never on here to push products. That's why every single one of you that are VIPs of mine, I'm sending you a box of these for free. Make sure that my team knows your address. Any one of you that joins up to be a VIP and comes with us into the private room, I'm also sending you one of these. So I'm going to send it to you for free. If you don't find that it makes a material change, then just don't order it. But 12 part per million hydrogen is higher than the concentration we could reach in those $300 hydrogen bottles, and it's less than $1 a day. Super interesting clinical study that was published in the Journal of Experimental Gerontology. And in this study, which they did on 70-year-olds and older folks, they measured markers of longevity like telomere lengthening. It lengthened their telomeres. They measured certain compounds like brain-derived neurotropic factor in the frontal lobes of the brain. They actually used a marker called TET2 to actually measure how well their methylation pathways were affected. It improved methylation, the conversion of compounds into the active form that the body can use. They looked at their circulation. They even looked at their sit-stand ratio. Sarcopenia, age-related muscle wasting in older ages, is one of the hallmarks of frailty and one of the hallmarks risks for mortality, like grip strength. And so they measured their actual sit-stand ratio, and that also improved. So the number of inflammatory markers that they measured, C-reactive protein, creatine phosphokinase, filtration rates through the kidney, were all improved in the control group versus the placebo group using nothing but hydrogen gas. So if there's one tip that I can give you, one product that I say is a must-have for your morning routine, it would be a hydrogen water tablet. Unless you already have one of those hydrogen bottles or you're already onto that tip, that will be a game changer for you. Wow, I cannot believe that we already burned an hour. I just talked off the top of my head. Guys, we still have 2 days left of this. We're going to take my VIPs. We're going to go into the VIP room now with Stephen A. Smith. I'm going to take your questions live. Those of you that are not VIPs, please join the community. I am trying to build an army of like-minded people. I want to take you on this journey with me. I want to educate and inspire you so you make a transition in your life. And then together, we're going to build an army of people that are doing this, getting this information out there to the masses so we can have a massive effect on humanity. Aside from my role in the Make America Healthy Again program, I don't know a better way to build an authentic community that could really change the face of humanity. So please join us. I'll send you a box of H2 tabs absolutely free. You can be maybe my next test subject that comes up on the stage, signs the medical releases, and we start fixing the challenges that you and your family are facing. We'll do it live in real time: mold, mycotoxins, metals, autoimmune, all kinds of conditions. I'm going to bring qualified health professionals to the table. I'm not licensed to practice medicine. I'm not going to do these on my own, but we are going to educate you guys to put the hope back in humanity that the body can heal itself. We're going to restore the faith that in the power that this has over our bodies. So that's a wrap on day one, guys. The free session. If you learned something today, imagine what we're diving into in the VIP group. I want to thank you all for joining. Please use the sunlight tracker. I will see you back here tomorrow afternoon at the same time. The next 2 days is also absolutely free. Now, all my VIPs, we're going to take a deep dive into my personal morning routine, and we're going to have a special VIP session with Stephen A. Smith, and I'm going to give you the free code for your H2 tabs. Those of you that are joining my VIP community, you will also get the free code for H2 tabs, and I'll see you guys in there, or I will see you tomorrow.